Welcome to the first instalment of the weekly Roundup with Bar TV ahead of round one of the Hardware Man Illawarra League competition. Jared Constable from Win Television joined by Mitch Jennings, and finally it's here.
Yeah, it's been too long. I tell you what, the wet weather's put paid to a lot of the pre-season action I usually like to go to and get a read on the competition. So finally out there and I can't wait.
Well, that's one of the things. It's pretty hard to gauge how the sides are going when there's been so little footy.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you sort of got to make a cursory look and sort of do it on paper. And obviously a lot of teams, competitions aren't won on paper. It goes a long way to it a lot of the time though. So I just can't wait to get out there and see some round one action and probably get an actual read on what people's fortunes will be.
Absolutely. And round one action gets underway on Friday night at Zeems Park with Corrimal taking on Berkeley. Obviously a new face in Jimmy Green at the Cougars and plenty to look forward to. You actually caught up with one of the young guns, Tony Pello, a little bit earlier.
Well, Corrimal young gun Tony Pello joins me. Tony, thanks for joining us, mate. Obviously, been a disrupted pre-season with a lot of bad weather and this sort of thing, but I imagine you guys are chomping at the bit to get out there on Friday.
Oh yeah, our whole team's sweating to get out there this Friday night. It's been a long pre-season, obviously because of the rain. I think we're in the same boat as everyone else. They're all edging to get out there, but yeah, very looking forward to this week.
Obviously, it's a new regime out there. Jimmy Green as captain coach. Can you tell me about the impact he's had on the club?
Oh yeah, he's brought his professionalism over to us, and the vibe it's just been unreal there at Corrimal compared to last year. So yeah, everyone's looking forward to playing for Jimmy.
Seems like he's really pushing a youth policy. It's a pretty young side, and is it fair to say a side with a bit of a point to prove?
Yeah, massive point to prove. We've got a lot of youth there that's just hungry for success, really, wanting to move on to the next level, and yeah.
Mate, obviously coming last year, it's nowhere any club likes to finish, but is the bar set a bit higher this year?
Yeah, the bar's set huge this year, especially with Jimmy coming over. He's brought that winner and vibe around the club. He doesn't like losing, so that's something that's in the back of everyone's head coming finals.
Cool, Tony. Thanks for joining us, mate. Good luck out there on Friday.
No worries.
Some great insights there, mate. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, they speak a lot about Jimmy Green's impact out there. I've always thought Corrimal probably are the club on a bit of a shoestring budget. They can't compete with the other clubs financially. I think the captain-coach model works really well for that club. You can see every way the boys talk about Jimmy. He's got a resume as good as it is. He's a country player of the year. He's won a couple of premierships. So immediate respect from all the young guys there from him. And I think it's another way Corrimal will have to go, a bit of a youth-first policy. Jimmy's spoken a lot about the country boys that have come in. They want to prove themselves in this league. So it is a team with a bit of a point to prove. So interesting to see what they do turn up on Friday night.
Absolutely. And on the other foot, I suppose, the Eagles as well. A few fresh faces there. We've got the Winchester boys back again. A few fresh faces, and they've worked internally a lot all pre-season. So it'll be another interesting one to see how that one goes. But I suppose the big game, aside from the grand final replay is going to be the local derby, Thirroul versus Helensburgh.
I love a local derby. In my time covering the Illawarra League, nothing beats a Thirroul Helensburgh derby. There's a lot of feeling, and it's fantastic. Battle of Lawrence Hargrave Drive, I call it. Two very proud clubs, two very locally based clubs as well. So that rivalry alive and strong heading into this weekend, I'm sure.
Absolutely. We were at the Illawarra Leagues Club for the launch a few weeks or a week ago, and I saw Cole Doran sort of walking around poking the bear, throwing a few jobs out there to some of the Thirroul Butchers old boys. So the mind games are well and truly started, and I think it's about time they get out there and show each other on the field.
Yeah, it's going to be great too. It's interesting, they're two sort of clubs at a bit of a crossroad, you could say. Obviously, Thirroul missed the finals for the first time in something like 25 years last season, but talking to the people in the club, it's sort of something they expected had to come. That had a big exodus of players out of the club. They were starting to build on those young guys in Thirroul. And I'll tell you what, the way they finished the season, those young guys really, really did come along. So under Jared Costello, he's back again. He's got them back again. They're a season more hardened, a bit wiser. I think Thirroul are going to go a lot better. And you've got guys like Joel Johnson skippering there, probably the best nine in the competition. So any guy touching the ball more than anybody else leading your way there, I think they're going to go pretty well, and they'll be pushing for that final spot again.
Absolutely. And another exciting game that we've got to look forward to is, of course, the grand final replay. Obviously, Dapto being so dominant and so many of the familiar faces retained in that squad. How do you think that'll play into this season?
Yeah, like we mentioned earlier on, it's hard to get a read on teams, what they're going to do, since we've seen such little pre-season action. So you do have to look on paper, and on paper, Dapto do look outstanding. They've really kept most of the side together, which in this competition can be tough after a grand final. A lot of the time that really throws the cat amongst the pigeons in a team, and sides get broken up. But they've kept all the sort of key men there. You know, you still got your Joel Reddies, your Lilias. You've got Bo Henry at the half, like I mentioned, and Mick Murphy, the reigning player of the year. They've got him back for another season, and I'm really excited to watch these young guys, the Justin Foglands and this type that have come through. They're another year ahead. They all came through. You know, Andrew Madden, these sorts of guys came through under Chris Likefall a couple of years ago. They've really, really come along. So I'm really looking to see how the youth goes there at Dapto. But West, I tell you what, they're really based on youth, and they look like a really hungry side, younger than we've seen from West in the last couple of years. Obviously, Daniel Holdsworth is a huge out. Obviously, I think I've seen West win games purely off the back of his boot. He gets tackled about 6 times a season, DJ, and he was steering teams to wins though with that shoestring boot. So he's away, but just see how their halves go. They've named Hayden Carpenter and Justin Rodriguez in the halves this week. Justin Rodriguez was named as captain of the new Illawarra South Coast Warriors team. He's been around for a little while. I think he's ready to make his mark as a half at this level. So interested to see how he goes. But it is a very young side, but a very, very hungry side. They've been thereabouts the last couple of years, the Devils. So I really, really cannot wait for this one on Saturday. It might be a bit scrappy because, as we mentioned, we've seen a little bit of pre-season action, but I won't be missing a minute, that's for sure.
No, definitely not. And Collies obviously do have the bye first up, but plenty of action to go in Inspirations Paints Women's League as well. Both competitions up and running and growing. It's come a long way since, I suppose, it was a thought bubble with Julie Nickel way back then, I suppose 2011, when Helensburgh really showed their dominance with the Tiger Lilies, and some familiar faces coming back for them as well in Sammy Bremner.
Yeah, that's massive for the Tigers. You know, she's a very proud Helensburgh girl, and she's back there playing in the league. It's massive for the league. You know, she's right up there. You know, arguably the best player in the women's game. She's been likened to Billy Slater, and her impact is very similar to Billy Slater. I'm sure it'll be like that for the Tigers. The Tigers, obviously, the bubble burst a little bit for them last year. Corrimal knocked them off, so they had a long reign of dominance there, but I think that's starting to wane a little bit. And I've mentioned too, obviously with the St George Illawarra having their nines team, I think a lot of the girls from all the teams are sort of mixed together. The mystique's broken down a little bit, and they all see themselves, you know, they're walking a bit taller, and I think every game's going to be a bit more of a contest, so that competition continues to just go from strength to strength.
I suppose in conclusion, looking at the season ahead, we're sitting here with the trophy. How do you see it going? And I suppose, how hard is it to go back to back?
It's very, very difficult to go back to back. We've seen it in NRL level. It hasn't happened since 92, 93. It's not much easier to do it in the Illawarra League as well. But Dapto, to me, do deserve pre-season favouritism, I think. Like I said, they've kept the bulk of that team together. They know what they're going to do. Teams are going to be gunning for them for sure, but that was sort of happening last year at a Dapto Showground anyway. They were a hunted side last year with the names they did have in that roster. So I think they'll be thereabouts. But as I mentioned, West, again, you know, your regular contenders, they've been thereabouts. Brett Kamali at the helm, you know, you don't get a much better footy brain than that. So I'm sure those young guys that came under him will be there again. But Collegians, to me as well, if you're talking about the contenders, you know, last year they fell away in the finals. But I'll tell you what, they've poached Jared Boyle over from Helensburgh. He's going to be in the halves with Ben Jones. That's pretty two high calibre halves. And you look at teams and their potential to go all the way, you do look at the key positions. So in the 7 and the 6, they're pretty well stocked there, Collegians. And like I mentioned, that other spot, you know, Corrimal, they'll improve. I'm sure Berkeley are going to be knocking on the door of a final spot this year, the way they've come on. And we've mentioned Thurul, and you certainly can't discount Helensburgh. I know a lot of people will discount Helensburgh. That 2015 premiership winning side really has been gutted. Not many left from that team. But I certainly would never be discounting a Ryan Powell coach side. They got there last year. They dropped their first four, last year, and ended up one game away from the grand final, and gave Dapto a pretty good run for their money in that preliminary. So I'm sure they'll be enjoying it up there at Helensburgh. They like being written off, and they like that siege mentality. But I certainly won't be discounting them. I think they'll be thereabouts too, and might surprise a few people.
Well, we'll see how long they stay under the radar for. I don't think it'll be that
long. Not long.
I think you're right. I think they'll come good. But that's the first instalment of the Bar TV Weekly Roundup, and we'll see you next week.